Hi everyone, Jeff here. Just want to talk to you today about the simple fact that central banks are not in control. They don't really control much, but they like you to think that they do. All they control is the very front end of the yield curve. What is the yield curve? The yield curve is there's the rate as the up and down axis, which means the amount of interest that is paid for a particular bond. And then there's the length of time, starting from the overnight lending rate, which is what the central banks can control, to 1 month, 2 months, 3 month, 6 month, 1 year, and then 2 year, 5 year, 10 year, 30 year, and probably a few others in there, but you get the idea. And so, of course, the concept is that the longer in time that a bond the longer that it is, it's probably a 10-year bond, meaning I'm going to borrow that, a government is going to buy that bond and take 10 years to pay it off, paying it the stated interest rate per year for that bond. Okay? That's how that works. And so the longer it goes in time, of course, the more interest you should be getting paid, because you're locking your money up for a longer term, which means also interest should be higher, because inflation is going to be higher as expected over time. So you're going to want to be able to have the same purchasing power when it's all said and done, than is now, and have a little bit, make a bit of profit for your troubles. The only thing that the central banks control is the overnight lending rate. What is that? That is the rate that banks are allowed to have to charge each other for borrowing each other money overnight. They need to borrow money from each other because they don't typically have enough money in them to cover what's expected to come out. And so they borrow money from each other overnight for a certain rate. They're that broke. It's disgusting. But that's the only rate that the Bank of Canada controls, and that's at the very, very short end of the curve. Typically, credit cards and so are geared by I think it's a 10-year rate, and mortgages in and around there as well. They're set by the bond market, meaning those who are going to buy these bonds, they decide, no, I'm not going to loan you money for that. So government can't say, you were going to loan me money and you're going to loan me money for cheap. It doesn't work that way. What they can do is what's called monetize the debt, meaning the central bank of that country gobbles up all of the bonds which were needed, as we saw during the pandemic here in Canada. The whole Bank of Canada did the whole thing where it sold the bonds to the banks and turned around and bought those bonds back a day later, because the banks didn't want to have the money, didn't really have the money, they didn't want to have this stuff, and so they ended up, that's what they did. The only other thing central banks do is they loan money, create various ways to loan money. That's it. They just loan money to the big banks and various institutions. There's the repurchase agreement, there's a repo market, there's the all kinds of different means to loan money out. They don't set the mortgage rates. They try to influence them by getting the people to think that they do, but they don't. It's the bond market which sets whatever the heck, and that is based on risk and profit. What's the chance that I'm not going to get paid back for this? I'm going to want a higher premium. If they're buying bonds for a company who's about to going broke, they're going to want a higher rate. And bonds are worth, essentially, they're worth, first of all, they're worth face value, okay? Because you're going to get that money back at the end anyways, great. But if you buy a bond, if you're holding a bond which has a much lower interest rate than a newly issued bond, then now if you're going to sell that bond in the secondary bond market, you're going to have to take less money for it, because somebody's going, well, hang on a second, I'm only getting this smaller amount of interest for it, so therefore, why would I buy this from you when I could buy a brand new one for a higher rate? So you're going to have to sell it for, as in the principal will be, you'll get less money for that principal, so you'll be losing on the principal. That's why I say that all the banks are underwater, because they're holding these bonds which they bought back before the pandemic, when everything was when the rates were much lower, about 2.25, extremely low. So now all those bonds are worth almost nothing, which is why they're trying to hold them to maturity. And if they can do that, then they're going to get their money back. They're not going to make much money, but they'll get their money back. But that's only if they can keep things rolling and not have to cash in, which means no runs in the bank, which means everybody needs to be thinking, everything's great, best economy ever. But realistically, the central banks are there to regulate the banks and keep that system healthy, but they don't really control much. They don't control the credit card rates. They don't control mortgage rates. They don't control loan rates. They control that overnight lending rate, and they can loan money to the banks, and they can create bank reserves to kind of buy assets. It's kind of really sort of strange, but the bank reserves are not supposed to leave the banking system. It's a weird thing that is kind of left over, but they use it because they can. So central banks like you to think that they're in control and have everything, but they don't. Again, as always, with everything that I say, always double check. Always check for yourself, but this is a giant Ponzi scheme and no one is really in control. That's what they're scared about, because things can happen which are outside of their control, and they'll have sooner or later, things are going to come crashing down because it's going to unravel. So protect yourself. Start thinking about how you would take care of yourself if things societally started to unravel. Gold and silver is a good way to protect your wealth. We'll check into that, and of course, have some food, have some cash. Cash is like physical cash is good for when the bank sees up and say, yeah, we're in trouble, so you can't withdraw or spend your money. Sorry, you can't do that because we need it. And they can do that overnight, as we've seen many times. Oh, look, yeah, there's a banking glitch. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, banking glitch. So you can't access your money. So take care. And remember, banks are not in control. Neither is the central bank.